Kevin,
And I'm Amanda.
and we are serving up
All that jam. A lighthearted look at the weekend jam bands.
where we break down the jam scene's biggest stories,
Talk new bands.
upcoming tours,
And show reviews. A little laughing, some hot takes, and an always positive message for the community.
Daryl Wolff of TAND.
All right. Today we are joined by Daryl Wolff, keyboardist for TAND out of Florida. With some recent lineup changes, they are poising themselves to go next level in the jam band scene. They play a fascinating amalgamation of Southern garage, blues, and groove that is anchored by solid songwriting, as evident on their latest EP, Puzzle Piece. Welcome.
Hey.
My original intro was different. I was going to start with the recent addition of Michael Garuli on guitar and vocals, but after emailing me, you said you had another lineup change. So let's start there with the bass player and maybe trace the history of the band back.
Sure, absolutely. We started. We had a band prior to this one with a lot of the similar, or I should say, same original tunes that we were playing. And in 2018, played our first show under the name TAND, with a primary songwriter as a 4-piece. And then in 2021, after multiple sit-ins, we had Mike join the band, and then most recently Jordan as the bass player, which has kind of solidified our lineup now as a 5-piece. And we are about, I believe, 12 shows in with Jordan at this point. I think 12. I have to double check myself, but I believe we're at that point now.
And you said Peach Fest was when he first played with you?
We did a local show as a beta tester about a week before Peach Fest, and then we all hopped in the van and drove up to Peach Fest, and Peach Fest was the first festival we did with Jordan,
right?
Who I must say is a multi-instrumentalist. I brag about him all the time. He called me out on it the other night, but he is fluent in guitar, bass, drums, and keyboards, and probably the best vocalist in the band now. But bass is the role we needed, so he happily stepped in to that role.
To do that, but it's great. That's great. A lot of times you get that. Like Garth Hudson from the band. That guy could play everything, you know? He was.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there. I personally am not one of them, but I'm jealous of all of them.
Right. Very nice. So let's, you had mentioned Peach. The reason that I had reached out to you guys was because I saw you were playing Swanee, Halloween, and you've played there before, I think. Is that correct?
We have. I actually didn't tell you this up front. I forgot to, but I had my own festival that I started about, I think it was 2010 was the first year, called Aura, which we did 7 years of, the last 4 years at Swanee. In 2013, I got pulled in to doing production of Halloween also, and I actually helped co-produce the first 6 years of the festival. So last year was Tan's first year playing at the festival, and my first year playing the festival as a musician. But it was my first time on the other side of it, because for the first 6 years that I had been there, I was on the production team. So it was an interesting change of events.
How did the production team do, in your view, being a musician this time?
They did great. There's definitely a list of staff changes from when I was working there, which was 2013 until 2017. But the wheel is very well oiled now, and post pandemic, it seemed to be running great. It's nice to go up there and see everybody, but it was definitely different, like not having a radio on and being called every 30 seconds to go put out a fire.
I dig that. Amanda, do you have anything you want to jump in with, or should I push him further with this Michael Garuli thing? How that happened?
I think we can probably come back to that. I did have a couple questions. So first, so glad that you're here, and I've been really enjoying listening to Puzzle Piece. I know that was released earlier this year. Wanted to just talk about album stuff, because I feel like I had read somewhere that you all were originally, maybe pre-COVID, planning to release something in 2020. Is that what this album is, or was that something different?
So our plan was our lead guitarist and primary songwriter, Taylor, when we first started playing together, we had another group that we were playing with a different bass player. And we started playing a lot of these songs, and kind of some of them transferred over from his band prior to that, but we started playing a lot of these and developing them and everything. And in December of 2019, we went into the studio for the first time in Miami, very excited about getting the opportunity to lay everything down. And in our minds, thinking that, let's go knock out, I believe 10 songs is what we were going for. Let's knock out these 10 songs in the 3 days we're in the studio, and then we'll mix it, master it, and release it. Well, we recorded all that stuff. And a couple of, we were gigging at the same time and had a lot of shows and everything. I think we ended up with about 25 shows that were canceled, that were announced already or being announced from the pandemic. We were in Key West in March of 2020, and we were playing the first of 6 shows that we're supposed to play down there, and everything got shut down. And we had just obviously been in the studio a couple of months earlier and recorded the bass of all these tracks and everything. So very quickly we got sidetracked from that project, and the way things go, everything became basically out of date by the time we started working on it again. And we ended up, by the time we made it back in the studio, we decided that we were going to completely re-record the entire album. I think there's one part that we figured out in one of the songs that is still the original organ from the original recording, but everything else at this point in time has been completely replaced. All the drums, all the bass, guitars, vocals, and keyboards, all redone. So Puzzle Piece was our attempt to have something that we could knock out a lot quicker, and release something knowing that the album was going to be a lot deeper of a project than we had originally planned on. And we did go in the studio and knock that out pretty quick. It took a little longer than we were expecting, but those 3 songs came as a result of realizing that the full-length album was going to take longer than what was expected. And one of those songs on there, Fortresses, actually is one of Mike's originals. Puzzle Piece and Entertainer are Taylor's 2 songs. The Entertainer, which actually references the pandemic in it, is one of the ones that we added on there at the last minute as a third tune. But the other 2, we were going to knock out really quick. So the album at this point is very close to being done. I believe there's a little bit of vocal work that needs to be done, and maybe 1 or 2 guitar solos and one more special guest that we're hoping for on one of them. And besides for that, it's pretty much done. I think it clocked in at 9 or 10 tracks.
Nice.
Do we get to spill the beans on the special guest?
Well, I don't, I don't want to kill it by talking about it before it happens, but we do have a lot of horns on there, which we don't typically have live. We don't have a horn section, but we work with a couple of different horn players down here, and we were able to luckily secure all of them to come do some parts on there. So you get that big band sound you're not really able to recreate live without 9 or 10 people on stage. So that part of it's really cool, but we are there. Puzzle Piece was great. We were able to knock it out really quick. All of it was post-pandemic, though. During the pandemic, we had hoped to spend a lot of time working on it, but it was really hard to get together. We all live local, within about 15 or 20 minutes of each other, and we do have our own studio here in Boca Raton, Florida. But we got tied up with trying to do the webcasts and stay relevant with that stuff, which we did end up putting out 7 webcasts during the pandemic. And we released some new songs
called Quarantined. They were called Quarantined.
Yeah, that was our creative name for it at the time.
Yes,
and we had all the equipment already, so it was just a matter of hooking it all up and getting going with it. But yeah, it was a way to continue getting together and stay relevant. And I think we debuted a couple of songs on there. Actually, The Entertainer, which I don't even remember what it was called originally. It had a different name. We debuted that one on one of the streams at that point in time, but there were 7 total of them. I think it came in about like 16 or 17 hours of music, and we had recorded all of it, which was cool. But the album's finally done now, almost done, which is really exciting.
Did they end up any of that? You had something called Live Volume 1 that had 3 tunes on it. Was any of that from that session?
I think it's 4. Live Volume 1 is all live recordings from shows. But there was one that we released on digital distribution prior to that called Live Inside Your Mind. And that had 4 jams from the Quarantine sessions that were on it.
Opposites Attraction, Debt, Out of Season, Sweater, and Bad Habits.
Sounds correct.
Sound about right. I did my research. I try.
So those songs are we multi-track all of our studio work and all of our live shows, and try to release everything. So all the quarantine stuff was recorded, and we went through as much as we could listen to, even though, over the course of 7 streams, we did have some repeats. We picked those out and decided to release those. And it was actually before Mike was in the band. So those are all featuring the 4-piece prior to Mike.
Nice. Well, you all have earned a fantastic release party when that thing is ready, because just being able to see that
I agree.
through,
Thank you.
100%. And I know that what's going to come out of that is, where you all are today. So I'm glad that you were able to get back in there and do that re-recording, because I'm sure it sounds like your sound right now. So very cool.
And I guess having Mike join the band made you had to find a place for him, correct? On those recordings.
The nice thing about Mike is that without even having a conversation with him, he slips right into his role without stepping on anybody. And there's not a lot of musicians, especially in the jam band world, that are competent at doing that. Everybody wants to hop up there and showcase and solo and have their chance for the spotlight, but it's never, Mike's very modest when it comes to that. So we had already worked with him. He actually, when we started playing live again, we did a couple of shows at a local venue here. I think we probably played 4 or 5 shows with Mike as a special guest with more than one track on them prior to him joining the band. So we had a lot of history with him already, and we had started working with him. So it was kind of a natural fit. We didn't really have to do much work to onboard him.
Well, what was the venue? I have friends in Bristol.
Well, Crazy Uncle Mike's is kind of our home base here. That venue opened a little bit before the pandemic, and we started working there. But being in Florida, where the pandemic was pretty much non-existent, we had, I think, a month or 2 that we took off from live shows, and by September of 2020, we were out playing again to 200 or 300 person venues down here, which was kind of crazy because our friends around the country, I think, were about a year in when they were able to start playing shows again and stuff. But there's also another spot called the Funky Biscuit, which I think we did. There was an event they started there called Jamming Taco Tuesday, which we hopped on about 5 or 6 of those. And one of those at the end of December of 2020 was one of the first big shows that Mike did with us. And I think he played pretty much the last 2 songs of the first set and the entire second set with us.
I know the Funky Biscuit. I've actually been in those Hallett halls. I saw Crazy Fingers there once.
Oh, nice. They're very good friends of ours.
Yes.
I played with them multiple times.
If you don't know them, Amanda, they're obviously a Grateful Dead cover band called Crazy Fingers. So, but
there's a cool scene down there, where you all are. I mean, what do you think about that? Do you feel like there's a pretty supportive community for what you all do?
I do at this point in time. I'll be honest. I moved here from New York in 1990 or 89 or 90, and the music scene down here wasn't non-existent. But back then, there was very few shows and very few tours that were willing to make the trek from the the state line of Florida all the way down here, because when we hop in our van to go on tour, it's about a 5.5 or 6 hour drive just to get out of the state. And then once you get into Georgia, depending on which direction you're going, you have more driving before you can even get to a venue that you can perform at. So a lot of people weren't coming down here. When I was younger, I remember the music scene that we're involved in basically being inclusive of the Langerado Music Festival, put on by, my good friends, Ethan and Mark. And that festival was basically defunct, I think, by 2010. And throughout the years, especially when I was doing Aura in the early days, I was trying to bring all the bands down here to try to rally up some of the music fans in the state to come up to the festival and stuff. The first year was in Brooksville, which was outside of Tampa, and then we moved to Orlando before moving to Swanee. So there was definitely these little pockets of music fans around the state, and they had to be tapped into. And the younger generation wasn't really exposed to a lot of these bands because Fish and the bands like that, Widespread Panic and Humphreys McGee and String Cheese, really never made the trek down here. Fish did come down for obviously Big Cypress and the New Year's runs they were doing in Miami, but to go see bands like that and get caught up in the scene just outside the music, just the community of people that surround them, was very hard for young people that were growing up down here. So, besides for me working on it for 2 decades now, there's been a couple of other promoters bringing people down here, and the music scene is now thriving for sure, but it hasn't always been like this. I'm proud of where it's at now, but a lot of that has to do with the the overabundance of festivals that are taking place now. You used to not have that, and a lot of the festivals are taking place now. We have the Okeechobee Festival about an hour and a half away from where we are. There's a couple of festivals that pop up in Miami. North Beach Music Festival is a new one that's down there. We played there last year.
Didn't Swanee have something this weekend? Didn't they have another festival this weekend?
We're in October now. I believe that they
I thought it was
have
like
Roots
more of
Revival.
bluegrass. Yeah.
Yeah, Swanee Roots Revival. Historically, there used to be two festivals there called Springfest and Magfest, which transitioned over to Roots Revival and Swanee Spring Reunion now. So those two festivals kind of replaced on the slate of where those other festivals were. But yeah, I believe that's there because it used to be about 2 weeks before Halloween, which is the date that we're at right now.
Nice.
Right.
Yeah,
You guys
MagFest
are
is a super special one for sure. But I thought I heard a little New York accent in there. I'm from Jersey, and it's always
Okay.
something always remind myself that where I grew up is not the same for just having a music scene as many other places. So I can definitely appreciate that, what you're talking about.
You got to think about it. In the Northeast, you can get in your car and within 2 hours pretty much go to 10 or 15 different booming markets to go see shows. Down here, we have Miami, which historically has been terrible for jam bands. Fort Lauderdale, which never has jam bands. Boca is actually on the map now as a jam band spot because a lot of people that are touring come down here for Guanabanas up in Jupiter. They'll come to Crazy Uncle Mike's. They'll go to Funky Biscuit. And a lot of it is because of the fact that down here, with the weather being so great year round, we have these venues that are not only like restaurants, breweries, they also have live music there. And they're able to do these sort of soft ticket concerts where they just have the ability to take some of their profit and hire talent to come in, and they can get more bands now. Because doing ticketed shows for younger bands down in the Southeast has been tough because there's these little pockets of music fans that exist, but it's not as widespread as it is up in the Northeast. And nowadays, I think that we see, I talk about this with the guys all the time, but we see that also exists in the Midwest and Colorado. You go to Denver and the music scene is booming there. Same thing in the Midwest, kind of like Indianapolis and that whole area. And then in the Northeast, pretty much everywhere, you have fans that just know all the jam bands that are up and coming. And, it's great to see it happening down here, but it's been a struggle.
I live in Baltimore. I got DC and I got Philly that I call local shows because Philly's within an hour or so to get up there. So I love that. But yeah, I have friends who like Revolution wasn't that the name of a club, something like that? The Revolution.
Yep. Revolution and Culture Room are the two venues down in Fort Lauderdale.
Right. My friend Jackie.
Between about 600 and 1,000 people there.
Right, that's big. Now, can you do that? Well, what are you usually getting? What size venues you playing? Or does it matter where it is?
Well, we've been, some of our shows, like I said, during the pandemic were extremely large for the time and what was going on. We have a couple of friends down here that we've been talking about hopping into some of these larger venues with, rather than waiting for a larger act to come down and do support tours for them. We're working on some stuff for next year possibly and hopping into some of these venues. We've played Culture Room, I believe, about 4 or 5 times now. Actually, our second show with TAND under this name was at Culture Room, opening for Perpetual Groove, who I've also been friends with for a long time. But I believe we did 2 shows there with them. We opened for Spafford at Culture Room. There's one more I'm not remembering right now, but for stuff like that, we can hop in there.
I saw Perpetual Groove stream last night from Brooklyn Bowl. It was Aqueous and then Perpetual Groove. They were sounding good. They stopped for a while, didn't they?
Perpetual Groove has had a couple of lineup changes also. They had a keyboardist that their main keyboardist, Matt, left the band for a little while, and they had someone else come in for, I think, about a year or 2, and then he rejoined the band, and now most recently their drummer left, and they've got a new drummer in the band now. And Aqueous, I think, has a temporary lineup change going on due to the birth of the keyboardist's child.
Aqueous and friends. They had somebody with them. It was 3 of them with one guy. So
those guys are actually one of my favorite bands in the scene.
So fun.
They have been for a long time.
Were you all veterans? Because I know I've seen Aries' name before. He's like a session guy. Wasn't he a session guy down there beforehand?
Oh, our drummer, Ali?
Yeah.
Ali's been He's got more stories than I can even pull out of the top of my head right now. But he lived in New York for many years and has been on tour with a lot of large acts over time, including Body Count, either as a tech or as a performing drummer. He's been around for a long time. He has worked in the studio down here. The studio that we're recording at currently, Power Station Studios, had been bringing him in for years as a session drummer for artists that would come in there basically and need a drummer or another musician to come in. They had a list of local musicians they worked with. So he's been doing that. I've been playing with him for about 12 years now.
So what was it before TAND?
The band before TAND was called Fugu. Taylor was still the primary songwriter. I think we were about 2 years into it before we did the name change and the lineup change. At that point in time, we had been, performing down here. So there was still that foundation that was being laid with a lot of those tunes. And some of the tunes like Swim, what's the other ones? Swim came over. It was called something different in Fugu, but it's been one of our tunes for the entire time. That actually is one of Taylor's originals. I would consider one of our anthems probably at this point in time. We have another one called Fat Tua, which has been around for almost as long. Opposite Attraction has been around since the band before Fugu that I wasn't in. Taylor and Pete were actually in a band together before Fugu started. And when we started Fugu, it was with a different bass player. And then eventually when we transitioned over to TAND, Pete joined the band. So Taylor and Pete had history already before I had even met Pete, which was kind of cool because, there's always that backstory there that it takes forever to tell it all, but it's always there somehow with all groups. It's exciting
soon to be a major
motion.
Soon to be a major motion picture.
We could definitely come up with enough content to make a major motion picture at this point in time. That's for sure.
Go ahead, Amanda. What you got?
Yeah, I was going to say, hopefully that would include something from the Virgin Islands tour. So I had all this stuff I was curious about, and then I saw that on your website. I'm like, I got to know, like, how did that happen? That sounds like such a blast. I was reading all about it.
It's definitely very exciting. The way that happened is we have everything that happens marketing wise is a multiple year project, including getting on nugs.net, which we obviously got onto this year. And right after being released on Nugs, I think it was about 2 weeks before the Fish Sticks run in Colorado, and we had just released about 6 or 7 shows. And because of timing and with the way that Nugs has a manual process of actually posting the shows once they're uploaded by the artist, a couple of our shows, including the Whitewater Center in Charlotte from August, ended up staying in the recently added shows list for quite some time, like over the course of that weekend. So we got a lot of traction from that. And there was this crew of friends that were in Denver and listening to music at the hotel, and they just randomly put us on because they saw the name on the list and they had never heard of us before and started listening to us. And one of their friends that was there with them happened to live in northern Florida, he's now become like a really good friend of ours. And she sent him out to see us at our Terra Firmata show in September. And he came out and reported back to them. And this girl, her mother owns the bar in St. John that we got invited to play at. And she had hit us up that weekend to tell me about it. But I was thinking to myself, okay, this is just some random person probably hitting me up to tell me that their family owns a bar. Like, I don't know if this is legit. This is too good to be true. So right after that show, when she had sent her friend out to see us, the next morning, I had a bunch of emails in my inbox from them asking when we were available and what we need to do to make this happen. So I start talking to her, and after a week of going back and forth and everything, we were able to figure it all out and solidify it. So they invited us there for a week. I believe we're going on a Wednesday, performing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, hanging out all day Sunday and relaxing and everything. And then there's a direct flight from St. Thomas back to Fort Lauderdale. So we've got to leave Fort Lauderdale, take the direct flight to St. Thomas, get picked up at the airport in St. Thomas with whatever fly gear we're bringing. They do have some backline there. And then we have to drive the 2 cars over to the ferry, get on the ferry with the vehicles, drive over to St. John. And once we get to St. John, then there's a local band house that we're going to stay in. And the venue is supposedly, I have heard from many people, one of the most beautiful spots in the Virgin Islands to watch the sunset from.
Damn. I wonder if that's connected to where they have the Funk It Up at the Fred, the 4-day festivals. They go to St. Croix, and I know the Virgin Islands are a part of that.
It might be. I know Marcus Rezak's been out there with Todd Stoops and Vinny from Mo, and a pretty hefty list of musicians that have played out there. They have Charlie Tuna playing there for Halloween this year. They've had a lot of people come out there, and yeah, it's super cool. They're big jam band fans.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Well, I guess that's the sequel then, Kevin, to the movie
Yeah.
that you were thinking of, because that's going to be amazing.
Tan goes to St. John's.
I can answer for certain that if we do bring some cameras with us, 99% of the footage will be entertaining. So we'll definitely capture some of it.
Gotta be at a place like that. Well, very cool, and congrats. That's going to be an experience for sure.
Thank you so much. We're excited for that. We're bringing all our gear to record it, so assuming there's no technical difficulties, we'll be releasing all of that also.
Nice. I was gonna. We spoke to Kendall Street Company a few weeks back, and they were talking about getting on Nugs and having to record every show. Do you just put this in the hands of your sound guy? Do you have a traveling sound guy, or is it a house guy that you say, "Here's a deck, can you record it so we can track it out later"? How does that behind the scenes work?
I'm laughing because it's a consistent joke with my band that this is also. I'm the keyboardist in the band, but I mean I actually started off with live sound engineering way back when I was even before we started the Aura Festival, and I've been accumulating gear and knowledge for the last however many years, and I actually built us a rig to handle all of that. I actually record all the shows myself, and I mix them and release them all myself. We don't have a sound guy yet, and I'm dying to find one, and hopefully it happens soon, including a booking agent and a manager, because it would be amazing to take some of the stuff off my plate. But right now, besides for my role as one of the musicians in the band, I'm handling absolutely everything else on the business and audio side.
Oh. Very good.
Sometimes you just got to do it to get it done, right?
Right.
Cool
you need a road manager and another manager.
The
road manager, I think, is the harder thing to find, somebody who's willing to go on the road for weeks on the end.
We did have someone, one of our friends who's been seeing us for the last few years, come to the table back in May, and he's been with us since the summer camp run in May. His name's Kevin. We nicknamed him KOT, which stands for Kevin on Tour. So he's been with us since then. He's amazing. He's great at driving. He's now learned how to completely set up and plug in my keyboard rig, which is great because that leaves me time to focus on the multi-tracking and recording rig, which the rig, I didn't say it when we're doing it, but 3 of us are on in-ear monitors now. 2 of the guys are refusing to do it. They'll hop on board at some point because it's amazing. But the same box that I built that handles all of our recording stuff also runs our in-ear monitors. So it's a multi-purpose box. So even though we're doing the extra work to hook it all up, we're able to basically multi-track every single show, regardless of what equipment the venue has or who's running sound. And that's why we're able to put out the same quality of show, because the venue actually, regardless of who the house guy is, has no control over our recording or what it comes out like. So they can kind of just do their own thing. But yeah, Kevin's been amazing. He hopped on, I think when we did the summer camp run, which was also Louisville, Kentucky, and Kokomo, Indiana, back in May, he came with us, and that was his first time with us.
Nice.
Love it.
Nice.
You're right, though. Kevin. That is one of the most important roles.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. He's great. And he absolutely loves it, too. I feel kind of bad because we stole him from being one of Spafford's biggest fans, but I think they understand.
Oh. Well, there you go.
Right. Same team, really, at the end of the day. Same team.
Yeah, those guys are awesome.
Nice.
So next summer, the Dead are playing, and I was joking that all of a sudden we were going to see Spafford shows and people popping up in the same cities for after shows after Dead and Company next year. So there's your $1 million idea. Just go on Dead tour, follow them around and play in whatever city they're playing afterwards every night.
I prefer Fish tour, but Dead and Company tour will be fun also.
Well, it's the last one, so
the Fish fans are more likely to go out after the show, I think.
I think
and that's what you're looking for, right?
That's
I ended up seeing Neighbor over the April run, so after Fish one night. So yeah, I guess
I was in New York for those shows. I ended up I made it until New York, until the Fish run, without getting COVID. I got it when I was in New York. Unfortunately, I didn't know it yet when I left New York, but I found out when I got home. But I was planning on going to Neighbor to see them when I was in New York, and I wasn't feeling great, so I ended up staying at the hotel that night. Those guys are awesome, though. I've met Rick multiple times in his travels with Pink Talking Fish, who actually played in my studio one time.
Oh, nice.
Neighbor's great.
They did a show a couple weeks back that they had horns. They got a whole horn section on stage.
Yeah, I think they did the multi-day run at Soundcheck Studios.
Yes, yes, that's what it was.
Yeah,
That's a
very
neat place.
talented group of guys.
So you said you wrote one of the songs on the last EP, or do you said the other guy was the main songwriter? So what do you just when you come up with
Mike
something, you're like, here,
Mike actually wrote one. Puzzle Piece and The Entertainer were written by Taylor, and Puzzle Piece, or I'm sorry, Fortresses was written by Mike.
okay. Now, do you write anything for
I
the
don't.
band,
I write
or
all my parts. I feel like, unfortunately, I've never had the mindset to come up with lyrics. You know, I'm great at making parodies of other people's songs, but as far as writing my own songs goes, I've never been. I don't know. They've never really come out of me. So
interesting? Well,
I like
sometimes you need
supporting
a
other musicians.
right. You sometimes you need a partner for that, like Trey
Yeah,
and Tom, or Jerry and Robert Hunter. You find someone who can. I mean, it's quite a discipline in itself, songwriting. I mean, I think a lot of jam bands it becomes second to what the music is, because there's a lot of dumb lyrics for a lot of jam bands. I don't get that from you guys. I feel like there's a depth there. There's layers to it.
I have a lot of confidence in the songwriting in the group. Like I said, we have three songwriters in the group now. After Jordan joined the band, he's brought a whole other table of songs, which are more of an indie rock flair, which is really exciting to me because it breaks us from the standard jam band style that we've played. But the influences from all the guys, Taylor and Mike, both have a ton of material. Taylor, in this group alone, probably has about 40 plus songs that we've either performed, whether they're actively being performed or shelved currently, which happens in bands over time. You put songs on the shelf, work on them later on, and bring them back with a whole new life. Mike has, I don't even know how many, but he's got, between his Heavy Pets catalog and his solo catalog, he's got to have like well over 100 tunes also. And
Wow,
then
you guys are stacked.
Jordan's bringing these extra songs to the table also, which is really cool because they all have a little bit of a different flair. When Mike first joined the band, we were doing primarily Taylor songs, but we're trying to do like kind of an even split at this point in time. Depends on what market we're in, knowing the crowd and whether or not it's a festival. And sometimes we played with Pigeons playing ping pong on Friday night. And when you have a show like that, normally we're playing 2-set 3-hour shows, and you only have 60 minutes in a support slot typically to showcase. So the other night, we tried to split it up and do a showcase of vocals from everybody, and we ended up playing 5 songs in 60 minutes. I think the longest one clocked in at about 18 and a half minutes. But it all depends on where it is. A lot of the songs are there. The new album that's coming out is 100% material that was written by Taylor, only because we had been working on it already and it's been in production for a long time. But I'm assuming that all our albums moving forward, which we probably at this point in time have enough material to immediately start working on another one, if not 2 different ones, that will showcase the material from all the songwriters.
Nice. That kind of follows through, and I can't remember where I saw this. It may have been on the website or somewhere else, but that you all have kind of a mission statement as a band. I don't know if I can read it. I kind of copied it.
I know it's on there, but I'm very entertained to hear someone else read it back to me.
All right.
I was just kind of posted. I never know if it's if it's true or not, but it seems pretty close. We're like definitely read it back to me and let's see how it goes.
I was going to say, let me read it and then you give me your take on it, because I was really intrigued by this. So it says, our mission is to bring listeners on a different musical journey each show, telling a story through songs weaved together by spontaneous bouts of improvisation. So I feel like what you were just describing, especially about the songwriting, really kind of connects to that at the core maybe, or the foundation of what you all do.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely accurate. I would use that if I could remember all those words, I would use that to describe us to someone else. But, some nights we'll perform a song straight ahead as it's written, whether it's a 5, 6, or 7-minute song. Certain nights we'll take it out on a journey. We talk about all the time what the best method of improvisation is, because a lot of bands, including us, will sometimes have a conversation and not necessarily to say we need to play it exactly like this, because if you're doing that, it's all just the composed section of the song, but having a concept of where we're going to go with the improvised section. But more often than not, we play the composed section of the song and then just go off into a journey for 15 minutes. And we'll kind of know, because we can hear each other, what it's doing sonically. But most of it is not discussed at all. And is completely on the fly, and that part of it's really exciting. And I think that a lot of people like going to shows and hearing songs that they know that they can use as kind of a foundation to connect with. But a lot of the show, sometimes over 50% of it, is music that has never been discussed, and you can really feel the energy from the crowd and on stage of what's going on, because you can tell it's just literally happening on the fly and nobody knows what's going to happen next. And sometimes it's amazing and goes off without a hitch. Sometimes it, crashes and burns. And there's a term in the Phish community that was coined called ripcording. And a lot of big Phish fans, which I am, will call it ripcording when Trey just decides to completely, pull the plug on a jam and start playing a completely different song without telling any of his bandmates about it. And that happens sometimes because if it's not really making any progress and not making a statement, it's silly to go on forever. But the thing you don't realize on stage, because you're so caught up in the actual performance, is that people may be connecting with it and it may be making a statement, but you're so focused and hyper-focused on what everyone else is doing around you on stage and what you're doing yourself that you may not be hearing the whole picture. And sometimes when you go back and listen to these shows that you thought were mediocre, they're actually great shows. And you never know in the moment, but you come back to it later on and listen back, and it actually is something that was making a statement. And that journey, I think, is what's the most exciting part of it. Because if you're playing the same songs night after night in the same exact style, people get sick of them after a while.
That's why you only do one tour every 3 years when you're like Alice in Chains or something. There's a famous story about Garcia pushing Lesh down the stairs once after a show because he thought it was so bad, and they ended up using those recordings for Live Dead.
Really? That's great.
Yeah. So I think that goes to what you say. You don't necessarily hear what you're doing in that moment,
Yeah, I mean, some nights that definitely happens. But, some nights you walk off stage with a big smile on your face, and I feel like the shows where everyone's smiling and having a great time, regardless of what you think it sounds like, you always listen back to those, and you can feel the energy, like on the recording, and you just know that everybody was on point that night having fun. A lot of it has to do with the dynamic.
You have very interesting choices of covers that you do. Like, is that a group thing, or do one of you come and say, hey, I want to do Hell in a Bucket tonight, kind of thing?
I'm usually the one that brings in the cheesy 80 covers. I had a microphone back in the beginning. I've been in a couple of cover bands. And when we first started Tand, I did have a microphone for a while. I used to sing Down with Disease, Money for Nothing, and Hungry Like the Wolf, which was kind of a joke because my last name is Wolf. And there were a couple that were in there for a while. You can only play a cover so many times because people will see it and they love busting out new covers and stuff. Most recently, our new cover is Karma Police by Radiohead. We actually played it in Orlando the other night. And that one is sang by Jordan. And, he's just like, he bleeds
the indie push. There's your indie.
Yeah. And he's just, he's such a showsman, like when he's performing, and everyone loves that. So it's really great to get him on some. He's doing Live and Let Die now. We played a wedding on Thursday night, actually, for one of our friends, and did almost an entire set of covers. We covered Moving Out by Billy Joel, which we've never played before. Benny and the Jets by Elton John, which we've never played before. We did a Live and Let Die. That's become one of our staple covers. I think I
saw a video on YouTube
this year.
I saw that.
That's
on
a great
YouTube.
one. Everyone in the group is big fans of the band. So we've been playing I Shall Be Released lately. All of us big fans of Chris Cornell and, the 90s rock era. We did, back actually that first show I was talking about at Funky Biscuit with Mike, we did a whole segment of Temple of the Dog and played 3 songs off their self-titled album, which was really cool. And we also play, we how many times have we done it? We haven't played it in a while, but we've done like a Soundgarden cover. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that's come in over time. Mostly everything I bring to the table gets shot down.
You just got to keep it in your back pocket.
Along.
Yeah. No, you just got to keep it there when it's like, we're not sure. Well, I had like these 10 great ideas.
You have to trick them into playing it. Be like, hey, try this out on the bass. Try this bass line.
My new method is that Taylor says yes to everything that Jordan brings in. So whenever I want to do something now, I tell Jordan and Jordan brings it to the table and it's a shoo-in. So that's my new method of getting everything done now.
Kev, we may need to cut that. We don't want anyone to know.
Right, yeah.
It's all
right.
You
got to keep that
in the back vault there. So we've been talking about other music. What do you listen to when you're not listening to Tand or playing in your band?
I've been a big Phish fan for as long as I can remember. I grew up listening to oldies. I used to work at an oldie station, so everything from the 60s and 70s. I mean, anywhere in the country I go and put on an oldies channel, I know most of the songs. I listen to some of that stuff sometimes. I go through different phases and everything, but I've been trying in the last couple of years. Not only do I love it, but trying to listen to a lot more indie rock because I like breaking myself from the jam band mold. I think there's a lot of different kinds of music that also can relate to the same fans. In the last couple of years, I mean, I'm a huge fan of White Denim, Vampire Weekend. Foo Fighters is probably my favorite rock band. I like a lot of them, but I just went to the Taylor Hawkins tribute show in Los Angeles, and that was pretty amazing to go there.
Wow.
And I've seen Foo Fighters live prior to Taylor Hawkins passing away, and I don't know why, but for some reason, for a band like that, they have so many hits and everything just relates with me. I listen to the music. I listen to it when I'm exercising a lot. And that's probably been one of my favorite rock bands in my history, at least. I've seen a lot of shows too.
Right. It was 6 hours? You were inside the Forum for 6 hours?
I was there for 6 hours.
And Miley Cyrus blew me away with Def Leppard. Miley Cyrus, who knew? She felt it out.
Is amazing. I've met her multiple times in my life. Her persona publicly with the whole Wrecking Ball era and everything is great for publicity, but she is actually an amazing person. She has a full control over her merchandise line, over her songwriting, over her band. She hosts concerts on her property to raise money for LGBT youth. So she's actually an amazing person. It's funny when I was saying this to one of my friends when I got back from the trip, but you go out there and sometimes you forget that these people that you idolize over are humans also. And they all have real life problems, death and drug addiction and everything you can imagine that they've dealt with. And going to a show like that was pretty amazing because you're in the room with all these musicians that have connected over time. And you look at how many of these bands are missing original members due to either, a sudden death or, overdose or
like Rush. You got to see Rush. That's sick.
Yeah. And I have seen Rush before, but seeing Rush perform with Dave Grohl on drums was pretty amazing.
Yes.
The MVP tonight went to Pink for sure. Pink was the most amazing vocalist in the room.
Right. She sang with Queen. Did she sing with Queen? Who did she sing with?
I'd have to reference it again. I don't remember because it's all a blur because it was, what was it, like 50 different songs over the course of the night, but yeah,
I went on
amazing.
YouTube. I went on YouTube searching. I pulled up the set list and went searching for the different bands, and so I got all these different weird angles, up from behind for part of Def Leppard and stuff like that. But
yeah, a lot of people were talking there about Travis Barker being the replacement or the new drummer. I don't want to say replacement because you can't replace Taylor Hawkins, but the new drummer, he got on stage and played Bad Reputation with Joan Jett. With the Foo Fighters basically backing her to open the show, which was pretty unreal. But right after the show, they announced the Blink 182 reunion, so I guess he's kind of off the table now.
Right.
All about timing. I know. I could not keep track of the performers, and in my mind, I just kept thinking, what would the production look like? The writers, just all of the details to get people in that one spot playing together. I mean, it's a massive undertaking, and
I will tell you this: I was backstage for most of the show. The backstage area was set up really nice. It was a bunch of I forget what they call them, but it's basically just a bunch of trailer dressing rooms back there set up in a big circle, and there was so much production inside between all the monitor consoles. Probably about 250 people working backstage between all the audio guys. Every band, every musician has their own techs. The video crews that were there, they had a very nice lounge set up behind the Forum with a bunch of big screen TVs and PA systems. And there's a really cool vibe back there with all the musicians just interacting with each other and telling stories. And I don't know the exact schematics of the finances on the show, but I'm pretty sure all the money was donated to charity, and every single musician that was playing there came on their own dime and performed for free.
Yeah. Wow.
Which says a lot about Taylor Hawkins, because I can't remember any time in my lifetime that a star-studded show like that ever took place in tribute of somebody.
Yeah.
It was really a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It was really cool.
Right. I saw the Alan Woody thing years ago when he died. with Government Mule, and I guess Phil was there, but it was nothing like, that was at Roseland, maybe some small place in New York. No, but that was fantastic. Like I said, I searched a lot of that out, and
People were referencing the George Harrison tribute show also.
right,
I don't even remember it off the top of my head, but apparently that was another big one. But yeah, I mean, it was just amazing to be there.
There was a for Dylan's 25th anniversary back in the 80s. They did at Madison Square Garden where Sinead O'Connor ripped up the picture of the Pope because she got booed over her Saturday Night Live thing. But I don't think that money was donated. I think it was pay-per-view. I think I paid $30 back in the mid 80s for pay-per-view of that.
Whoa, bring it back.
Videotaped it. I had all my videotapes ready to go.
Nice.
I mean, they still have it. It's just called something else now, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, well, now there's 30 versions of it.
It's called Nugs now, is what it's called.
Yeah.
Basically. So do you have your shows? You don't have your shows actually live streamed. You don't have that thing going yet.
Kevin KOT actually puts them on something called Mixler live from the show. I don't even know how to find the website or where it is, but I do know that it's going on and that we do have some of our friends around the country that have been tuning in and listening. But we're not live streaming the soundboards right now. I
want to find Kevin so I can find his Mixler stream.
I know.
I'll send you a link to it. I think he's logged into one of his friends' accounts.
Okay.
It started off by them streaming all the Spafford shows, but now they're streaming everything they go to. So
Billy Strings has one that does that. Billy Strings streams a lot of his shows on Mixler.
Yeah, I mean, to stay relevant now, everyone's, going back to the conversation about the improvisation section of the show. People want to listen because they don't want to miss the one show where this song was the 20-minute version. We obviously are all, Mike actually used to tour with Goose back in the day when they were getting 10 or 15 people out to the shows and they were a 4-piece and then a 5-piece. We're all fans of Goose, obviously, and, listen to the music and study it. Everyone wants to listen and see what, successful bands are doing nowadays and everything. But even with them, you'll see sometimes some of their songs will come out as a 6 or 7 minute version on one night. And some nights they show up on Nugs as a 25-minute version. Mm-hmm. And you can't help but want to click on it and hear why that was the 25-minute version of that song. And you listen to it and, it's the same thing. It's like, I wish I was there for this version of this song. And sometimes it's a once in a lifetime thing that they perform them like that and it just never happens again. You have no control over it.
What were they nominated for, Amanda? What Grammy?
It was Americana for the album, but then I think Hunger Site as a song.
For Americana, they called it.
It's Americana,
which is so interesting because they're indie. They're indie rock. That Hunger Strike album, whatever it is.
I know. I've looked at it like 4 times. I was like, wait a second.
They're good at being whatever they need to be now. That's one of the things that Goose has always been great at. They're every genre.
I'm questionable on their covers. I'm a cover snob, and I don't dig some of what they do. I'm not a Kenny Loggins guy. So
it's a hit or miss thing, but the big thing is that as a fan of a band like that, and in the music scene in general, you have to be okay with the bands that you love taking chances, because once you put some kind of restriction on an artist where they're not able to have full creative freedom, you start losing some of the special stuff also.
You end up like Elvis.
You never know what's going to be good or bad when you bring it in. But I mean, sometimes it's just, Fish has been notoriously a band that does that also, that brings in covers that are completely out of their realm. I mean, I think one of the ones that has been hit or miss is Golden Age, the TV on the radio cover. I believe it's a TV on the radio cover. And sometimes you never know, but you gotta be there for the ride. And luckily, all the streaming services, including Nugs, if you want to, have a fast forward button and allow you to skip a track.
A buddy of mine listened to all of them and ranked them all. He listened to every Golden Age and ranked them.
Okay. Goose has some great covers. I just listened today. I know the big thing with covers is that when you go to a market or a show where nobody knows who you are, sometimes the cover is the thing that connects with someone in the crowd who typically would say, I don't know any of these songs. These guys are just a wanky jam band, and they hear a cover and it pulls them in. And it's the best version they ever heard of that cover. That could be the thing that sets you apart, because a lot of times with your original music, until people are paying attention, it doesn't connect with them. And then all of a sudden it does. Good point.
Yeah.
When I was driving home just now, I listened to the The Way It Is that Goose played at their show the other night. And, that's a song for me, the Bruce Hornsby tune. And that song just, has always connected with me. And, they do a great job at it. And I think in that one is a home run for them. It works great with Rick's voice.
Tupac Shakur.
Yeah.
Shockingly, I didn't have that.
All these songs have 50 writers on them. I get it wrong sometimes.
No, I always joke that because Tupac sampled that years later.
Yeah.
And his thing there. So that's fantastic. Do you have anything?
I didn't know about the
Mary?
Grammy. That's also very cool. One of our friends was nominated for their new album, just came out, Article Sound System, who's a local band here in South Florida, and they were nominated, I think, for their album as Best New Artist. I saw them post it this morning.
Nice.
That's fantastic.
I'd like to get to that point one day where until you release the album in the first place, you certainly can't be nominated for anything. So that's the first mission.
Is recognition important to you?
No, it's not important. I think that most of the time, the studio works of bands like us that are put out are important because people go and listen to them and are able to see that you're well-rounded and you can not only perform live, but you can also put the music together and produce it in the studio. A lot of times it's overproduced to the level that you can't recreate it live. And we're certainly not the kind of band that wants to bring out a laptop or be playing tracks. We're not the kind of band that can afford to bring a whole horn section with us right now. So the fact that we have horns on these studio, recordings does not translate to what people are getting live. But I think that it's really important to be well-rounded and be able to go in the studio and do that as well. The only thing that matters in regards to recognition for me is making people happy with all the work that you put in, because it's very rare that you ever end up in the situation where you're, rolling around in money doing live music. The bigger you get, the more you have to spend, and the bigger your overhead gets, and the more, pardon my French, bullshit you have to deal with. And,
I think a lot of people miss that with bitching about the price of Fish New Year's. It costs them a lot of money. I'm sure they're comfortable.
It's gotten very expensive.
Don't get me wrong, but
It is super expensive. And I think how much of that translates to whatever is going to happen, on New Year's, and the people that are going to be involved in the shenanigans. I mean, all that's got to add up to something.
It's also the first New Year's, I think, since the pandemic that's happening on New Year's Eve, right? Assuming it happens.
Yeah. It's going to be huge.
Right. Now, do you have Halloween? Well, Halloween, you're going to be at Swanee at Halloween. Do you have Thanksgiving shows you do, or New Year's shows that you have booked?
We've been super busy for the last couple of weeks. We're actually, this week, I just got back from the Orlando and wedding mini trip that we did. We're leaving on Tuesday, and we're going to do Nashville, Cincinnati, Louisville, and Asheville. And we're ending on Saturday night in Asheville doing a Sound Tribe Sector 9 after party. We come home for a couple of days, go back up to Halloween, come back for a couple of days, and then we're going up to Atlanta and Athens. We're performing at the Variety Playhouse with Big Something and Funk You on November 4th, and then we're going to play with our friends, the Orange Constant in Athens on November 5th, drive back to Florida, have rehearsals all week, and we're doing a show in Boca Raton with our friends Guavatron, who are kind of like a Jamtronica band, kind of in the realm of the Disco Biscuits. And then we have a couple of weeks off, luckily, and we're doing one more show in December. And I think that's about it for this year before we fire back up next year, which will be nice to get a little bit of a break. Right.
Are you going to go up to see Fish on New Year's?
I don't think I'm going to go this year. I normally am driven by FOMO and do end up booking a trip. And this year I'm so burnt out from everything that's been going on. I said, it's just kind of going to be nice to stay home and hang out around here. Crazy Fingers actually plays a New Year's show at my neighbor's house at the end of my street on New Year's every year, which I can walk to. It's about 10 houses away. So I end up there typically when I'm home. And I could stumble back to my house at the end of the night, if I even make it out in the first place.
It is amateur night.
Yeah. And there's a lot of competition, it's not about recognition and everything, but there's certainly something that hurts when you're trying to do something special and you have someone else that pops up down the street doing something bigger and better, and you have to compete with them, and you lose a lot of the crowd that you were trying to do something for. It's the nature of the business. But New Year's Eve is one of those nights. I mean, especially now, post-pandemic, or, whatever you would call the era right now, there's a lot of competition. People that are wanting to go out on New Year's are going to go see one of the big bands somewhere around the country, and you're left with the stragglers locally that decided they weren't going to travel for one reason or another, and to try to put on a big show and compete with everything else that's going on, in my eyes, just isn't worth it. I have more fun, staying home and hanging out with friends and watching live webcasts of whoever happened to be playing on that night. But unless it's a big show somewhere else, playing a local New Year's show in South Florida has never been my thing. We've done it before, but every time I feel the same way afterwards.
You feel disappointed.
It's not really a disappointment. It's just, that there's 365 nights a year you can perform, right? 52 weekends a year, just a little over 100 weekend dates, Friday or Saturday that you can perform. There's so many opportunities to perform, to play on a busy night like that. It's just crazy to me. And then have to pack up and drive home with all the, all the crazies out on the road.
Goose was smart before they got big. I guess they're still doing it in Colorado this time, but they're Goosemas. Instead of doing New Year's, they used to do the thing a week before Christmas, which is a way of being able to bring your people together around the holidays, do something special like you're saying, but not be stuck, like you were saying, with 10 other bands playing in 100 miles.
Except for when you're on the top of Rockefeller Center in New York City. And then you can't bring your friends.
Yeah, you can't bring your friends. That was a neat. They're geniuses.
That was really
Their
cool.
Marketing savvy is fucking off the charts. It is.
Yeah, they have a great team behind them. A lot of their team are people I've worked with over the years in the festivals and everything. It's really cool.
Yeah,
to
Greg
progress to that
Greg
spot.
Greg is a friend of What Plus, this other thing I do. We've had him on a few times.
We know one of their managers, Matt, has worked with the Heavy Pets for a long time back in the day. I used to work with a lot of his bands when I was doing Aura. The Heavy Pets?
Yeah.
The Heavy Pets are still together. One of them has a kid now. One of them lives in Colorado now. Two of them are in I know you guys won't believe this, but a Grateful Dead tribute in South Florida called Funkin' Grateful, where they're performing a lot with that. And they do still perform shows. They're not really touring anymore or traveling too much. I think they did a Colorado show or two in this last calendar year, but they're not touring too much, but they do play down here. It's nice to see them still getting together. They do have 20 years and they do still work on some stuff, but they're not as active as we are in regards to, traveling around and such. I can't say whether or not they'll get back to that point, but right now that's where they're at.
Have you all been kind of throwing around some ideas for how you're going to tour to support the new album? Because I know we've mentioned Colorado a bunch. That's where I actually live these days. I'm out in Denver, so you know, yeah, just getting curious.
We're dying to get to Denver. We're trying to get there in 2023. We're currently looking at some ideas and everything. I have said all along that Old Town Pub is one of my in Steamboat Springs is one of my must-haves. So I'm hoping that at some point when we secure some dates there, we can build the Colorado run around that. But we've definitely talked about the fact that for a band like us, Southeast, Northeast, Midwest, and Colorado are the areas that we need to really start working, pretty hard. And I think that in 2023, we're going to strategically do that. Jordan's getting married in May, and he's taking a month off right before festival season. So we're going to let him go ahead and do that. And we'll probably work on some new material and maybe work on some of Mike's and Taylor's solo stuff that they do. And, we have our own spots, so we'll work on some recording and everything. But once the album is done, we're planning on in late March of 2023, we're going to try to go up to the Northeast for about 2 weeks and do probably about 10 shows up there.
Come to Baltimore.
Little market there.
Come play the 8x10.
We will.
Please don't go to DC. Come to Baltimore and play the 8x10. I hate going to DC.
You got to find us a good support slot up there. It's our thing right now.
Nice.
Brian and Abby, who run the 8x10, are really good people. So, and Tim Walther, I guess, Walther Productions. They do a lot of the.
The name sounds familiar.
Yeah, Tim Walther's the guy to reach out to.
I'll
send you some. Well, I'll send you an email and give you some heads up.
Yeah, we're definitely planning on coming up that way. But all of us with where we're at right now, love being able to live in South Florida. Which is, like I said, not the best market for what we're doing, but we can hop in the van. It's an extra 6 hours to get out of the state and go up and do these runs. Mike's actually from upstate New York. The Heavy Pets, I believe, formed in Goshen, and Mike still has family up there. So our plan to make this stuff possible, because, some of us need to get back for work and such, is that we go up there and knock out a run of shows and leave our van and our trailer up there, so we don't have to drive back and forth. Mike can stay up there potentially with it. Me and him were talking about that, and then whoever needs to fly back to Florida can fly back, and we go back and meet up with the rig and do another run of shows up there. So geographically, to relocate would probably be better for us with what we're doing, but it's still possible to pull it off. And I think that definitely, Colorado and the Northeast and Midwest are the big areas that we're going to focus on. So we're working on some touring plans for next year for all that stuff.
Nice. Yeah, Sean at OTP is one of the best out here at just getting,
Yeah, I've talked to him before.
And yeah, he's a good dude, and I know that he would love to have you all, and he does such a great job with promotion. And
feel free to put in a good word.
Oh, you got it. Absolutely.
No, we're gonna bother you with some stuff, try to help you out here, because I think I see the look in her eyes that we like you guys and want to see you succeed. So
absolutely, we appreciate all the help we can get.
There you go.
And if you want to run sound, feel free to hop on board.
Hop on tour. Okay. Well, I got one. I still got one I got to get through high school, but talk to me next year. Once I get them both through high school, I got nothing holding me down anymore. I've put in my 20 years.
I can't say the same, but I used to do merch on the road for a couple of bands, and talk about, Kevin on tour. Amanda used to be on tour, and it was good times. So when you do make it out here, if you need some help with that, I am all for it.
Thank you so much for coming on today. We've covered so much ground, and I can't wait to see where you guys are going.
Yeah. So this has just been fantastic, and I love what you all do, and we'll definitely be paying attention for the album drop in next year and where you all end up on the road to support that.